Hello everyone, can you all hear me? So the protocol today would be, we will be talking about Salesforce, what is Salesforce.com, and what are the different options that are available for professionals. And we'll try to do some demos. That was the plan we had. So we'll continue with the same plan. We show you some slides and then we'll show you a few demos. Um, and then we'll also, take questions as we move along. So you can keep typing in the question windows, and then I'll try to take all the questions, and then we'll try to, answer them during the session as much as possible. And if there are any questions which are unanswered towards the end, we'll make an effort to, get back to you with answers to the questions, as we'll be having all your, mail IDs as well. So with that, let me just move on. A very quick introduction about myself. I am Devanand Maniro. So I have around 18 years of experience and around 5 years in Salesforce. And without much about myself, I think let me move on. So what we're going to do today is we're going to understand about what is cloud computing in Salesforce and what are the different tracks available in Salesforce. And we'll show you some of the features of Salesforce. And we have options for both administrators, developers, pure play developers, people who are already having experience in projects in other technologies like Java or C Sharp, or other programming languages. You're comfortable with JavaScript, or other JavaScript libraries you've been extensively using, right? jQuery, Bootstrap, all of that. So Salesforce does support all of them. So we'll also talk about them, and then we'll also have a good amount of options for all the functional folks, right? So I'm assuming we have a mix of folks here, and if it's predominantly developers, that's what we assumed here. People are looking to get into the development track, uh, but we would be providing something for all the tracks. Okay, so I'll skip this slide anyway. Anyway, I'm going to get this slide and the recording of this session, right? So, just a quick introduction about what is uh, the underlying idea behind cloud computing, right? So, if you look at, you would have heard about the cloud computer terms like infrastructure as a service, PaaS, SaaS, software as a service, platform as a service, all that, right? On the premise and all that. So typically, you just want to give a quick comparison here, right? So it's the way we want to eat, right? You want to eat from home. You want to prepare everything yourself, right? Or you want to just you know eat out, right? So if you look at the cooking process, right, you want to get in some your own, you'll have your own kitchen, you'll have the infrastructure for the kitchen, you get your ingredients, cook them, right? That's the traditional stuff. And then probably you will you know have the uh, even the pizza delivered, right? That's typically the option we do. We just eat at home, or you want to just go and dine out. So this is just a comparison. It's not that it's an exactly similar thing that you do in the cloud world, because today, if you look at it, right, the way cloud is growing, right, uh, it is going to be the de facto thing for most enterprises down the line, because everyone's looking to cut cost, more of legacy platforms, and then be on the cloud, right? It's not just being on the cloud, we're just adopting the entire SMAC spectrum, right? Social, mobile, analytics, and cloud, and also Internet of Things. So the penetration of mobile devices and also the advent of the various other things has really resulted in all of this. So let's look at what is Salesforce, right? So Salesforce is a cloud computing organization, and they're 100% cloud, right? Public cloud. They started off in 1998, and then they've grown very rapidly. They've been growing almost like 30% year on year. they're a $5 to $6 billion company, right? And they're expected to become a $20 billion company, right? And they support all the platforms, the latest in SMAC and IoT, right? Like I said earlier. And then uh, even in cloud, right? Within cloud, they have offerings in CRM space, which is customer relationship management, where you have primarily sales cloud and service cloud and marketing, right? Apart from that, they also have the platform wherein you can build, you know, the entire package, right? So these are the different options available, right? I'll just try to see if I can quickly get into the system and show you a few screens, right? And then try to relate some of the concepts. Just give me a minute. I'll be just on mute and hiding my screen for a minute. Meanwhile, if there are questions, you can go ahead and ask. Uh, we'll be more than happy to answer them, while I just want to use my screen to open some stuff, right? So I think I have a question from one of the attendees. So I think the question is about what sort of programming languages that Salesforce support, right? So Salesforce does have a object-oriented programming language, right? So it's called as Apex programming language, and it is pretty much uh, based on similar to Java. I won't say it's based on Java, but it is very much similar to Java in the sense it supports cloud, all the object oriented programming concepts. You can define your own classes. You have you know it supports all the basic stuff. It's a strongly typed programming language, right? And then you can define your own classes, and apart from the classes, it also helps you support as a scripting language, right? So I just uh, block the screen for a minute. Just give me a few minutes. I'm just getting onto the environment here. So that's why I just blocked the question, but I'm anyway just answering some of the questions which are coming in, right? So Salesforce does have a full-fledged object-oriented programming language. Having said that, there are certain constraints in terms of the way it gets executed, right? So those of you who are familiar with Java, uh, Salesforce does have this programming language, whereas in Java, the compilation happens on the cloud, right? Sorry, on your laptops, right, on your systems. Whereas in Salesforce, the compilation happens on the cloud. So the environment is there on the cloud, right? And then all the stuff that you want to see, right, is all there on the cloud. I've just shared my screen. So similar to Java, it also you can also use the Eclipse IDE, right? So they do provide a plugin called force.com plugin, right? So wherein you use the Eclipse IDE, which is typically the IDE that is used by all the Java developers, and you can also do all the team sharing stuff or all the integration deployments, right? So all the good stuff that you can do in Java, right, you can do it in Salesforce using Apex. And also they support JavaScript, uh, and they have a proprietary tag based language similar to HTML. So I have a question from Vikram. So he says, uh, for administration, knowledge of Apex is mandatory. So for administration, knowledge of Apex is not mandatory. So you have lots of stuff that you can do just with, the declarative programming options, right? So you don't have to really get into the administration from in terms of the programming language. You're not getting to Apex and all that, right? Whereas from a programmer's viewpoint of view, you have all that stuff. So it's up to you, like which track you want to take, right? So you want to get into a pure play admin track. There is huge amount of scope because administrator, you won't believe, the kind of things the administrator can do. He can actually create objects. I'll just show you a quick demo, right? So I'm on the Salesforce initial login screen here, right? This is more of a user come and administrator view, right? And Salesforce does support the MVC design pattern, right? So if you are familiar with MVC, right? MVC stands for model, view, and controller, right? So model, stands for the database part. The view stands for the UI, right? Visual interface, and then uh, the controller stands for the business logic, right? So you can just see what all of this means here in Salesforce, right? So if you look at the screen in front of you, right? So I'm just trying to highlight a few things here. So these are nothing but tabs, okay? So these are the uh, user interface which the user can click. Say, let me click on student master, right? So student master is a tab. So for the purpose of this particular session, I have tried to use a very simple application which we are calling a student master, right? So all of us would have been students, so it's easy for us to relate. So we're having some student records, and then we are tracking the marks, right, and the activities they want to perform. They could be into, say, tennis or cricket or baseball, football, all that stuff. And then their requests for leave and all those stuff. Say, let me just open a particular record. So what you see here, right, the list of things here, these are the records. So when I click on the student master tab, right, it shows me a list of records, right? And if I click on this, right, one particular record, it shows me the record details, right? So these are the record details, right? So for example, this is a student screen. So I can click on edit here and then make some changes to this, right? And then you know you can put in business validations, you can put in business rules behind this, you can create a trigger on the database side, right? I'll show you all that. I'll just show you a quick demo of those triggers and all that. So here I can make the changes, just like any web-based language that you have used in any of the other, using say PHP or .NET or ASP.NET and all that, right? Or JSPs, all that. So even here, you can build these screens, and the good thing is the administrator can also build these basic screens. And if you are a large enterprise, you would typically want certain complex functionalities. You will have integration between systems. You'll write a lot of batch jobs, and you will be using SOAP APIs, REST APIs, daily batch jobs, real-time batch jobs. You'll be calling some web services. So all of that is also possible. So the administrator come the declarative options, right? So he need not worry about the programming part, whereas the developer has it's his own world, right? So as of 20, I think 2013 or 14 it was, I think there are more than 3.5 billion lines of code written in Salesforce, right? So the Apex source code, right? That's the number of lines which are written across 130K customers of Salesforce. So this comprises of large scale customers, large enterprises, like large banks or big telecom companies like say AT&T or DirecTV, Telstra, in Australia, right? Or many of the large banks, insurers, uh, retailers like Coca-Cola or Walmart, or you know, or big pharma companies, right? Pfizer and all. So the number of lines of code, right, in this entire ecosystem is around that much, right? So we'll take a look at some of the building blocks here. So like I said, these are the tabs, right? So these are the visual elements, right, that you can create. An administrator is able to create these visual elements, and he can also create the basic data model, right? So you need not become you may be following instructions, or you can yourself do it, right, as an admin. Plus, there are many admins who have started off an admin and then moved on to become very good expert programmers also, right, over a period of 3 to 4 years. So there is scope for both the sort of people, right? So I'm just switching to a developer mode here, okay? Uh, so I had a Eclipse. I had a plan to show you the Eclipse and all that, but unfortunately, I think I'll have to restrict myself to the UI today. But we'll try to see if we can post a few recordings of how you can use Eclipse in Salesforce a bit later, right? So here I'm getting into a developer mode, right, or an admin mode rather. So if you see on the left, right, you have options for the administrator. So you can create users, you can create security profiles, you can take care of mobile administration, you can do email templates, lots of stuff. And at the same time, these are the options, right? The build options are for the developer, plus a bit for the admin also, right? So develop, you can create Apex classes, triggers, you can create your own VF page, all of that. And at the same time, you can also create some objects as an admin as well. So let me try to create a new object, right? I'm just getting into this menu. We'll just see, I'm just creating a simple object here, right? And then I'm just using a standard auto format for generating a record ID and all that, right? So this will be the format. We'll be starting here. Then I'm saying allow report. So what it means is you're allowing reports to be generated on this particular object you're creating, right? I'll skip the rest of them for the interest of time, right? We'll not be able to talk about each and every component here. So I've just created I think there's a small error here. Okay, that's not an issue. There was a small syntax error, I guess. So I'm just creating a simple object. Okay, so this is nothing but an object in your object oriented parlance, or in the RDBMS parlance, right? You call it table. So you created a simple table, right? So it has certain standard fields which comes with the object, right? When you create the object, there are some fields. Then you can create your own custom fields, validation rules, and all that. So I'll just see how I can see this in the front end, right? So for the comfort, I'll just open another screen here. I'll be toggling between these two screens. Okay, just stop me if you find it a bit confusing. Uh, so these are some of the dashboards. Okay, so let me just click on say accounts dashboard. So it shows me a list of accounts. Okay, so this is my list of accounts, and say I open a particular account record. Okay, so these are all some standard objects in Salesforce. Okay, so you have an account which is part of the sales module, right? You have contacts, then you have opportunities, you have cases related to the account, right? And then you can just see how this thing looks in the background. I'll come to this object in a minute. Okay, uh, we'll make it visible on the screen, right? And then I'll look at after we look at accounts. Okay, so this is the account screen. Okay, as a user, right? As a user, end user, the same thing I'm just showing you as a admin or a developer. Okay, these are the fields. Okay, so if you observe, you have account name, account number, account owner, account size, and account source, right? The first 5 rows. These are the 5 fields on the account object, right? So there are the data type, name, text, lookup. I'll say what is lookup. Then you have a text. Then you have a pick list, which is a drop-down box. You have a currency field, right? And then you have a checkbox, fax, all that. So if you look at it here in the front end, right? So all these fields are displayed to you uh, with data, right, as a user view. So let me just see if I can create a quick field for you, right? I'll see if I can just display it on the screen for you. So I'm creating a field, okay? I'm just doing it a little fast. just for sake of time. So new account field. Okay, I'm just creating a new field, and you can. I'll skip this for now because this is security based topic and we'll not be able to understand it now. We click on save here. The objective here is to create a new field, right? So if you look at it, I have created a new field called a new account field. Okay, so let's see how it displays on the UI. I'm just switching to the UI window. Okay, I'm just clicking refresh, and if you see here, you see the new text, new account field, right? So I can click on edit, and then I'll say this is the new account field I created for the demo, right? I'll just click save, and so it's as simple as this, right? Creating a new field. And those of you who are more technically inclined, say I have seen a schema builder. Do I have something like that in Salesforce? Yes, we do have something called a schema builder, right? So those of you who have used Microsoft, uh, you've been on Microsoft platform, or even I think Oracle and all supports a schema builder, right? So you can see the relationship between the different objects here, right? So I'll just try to just shrink this a bit. So this is a schema builder for you, right? So I have an object here. Let me just adjust the screen. Yeah. So you have standard objects, right? Then we can also look at the custom object we just created, right? I'll just show you that object. Uh, my demo, right? This is what I created just now. So let me just zoom in here. So this is my demo object, right? I just created it a few minutes back, and then I can actually drag and drop fields onto this if you want to do that, right? Say I can define a master detail relationship. Uh, so let's say I call it, say, my demo to account object, right? So I'm trying to create a relation between the my demo object that I created and then the account object. So if you observe, a new link has been created, right? A master detail relationship, which is connecting to the my demo object and the object account object, right? That we just saw. So this is my demo object, and this is the standard object you have. So if you look at it, we have managed to create a relationship between these two. Right, I can just move it along and then bring them next to each other, and I can just see them. So you can visually also, use the schema builder, look at the relationships, and Salesforce supports the regular relationships like master detail and even the other relationships that you have, right? Your junction objects, many to many, right? You typically will have a many to many relationship where you have a relationship between three objects, right? Say, for example, a student activity, right? A student may be part of more than one activity, right? And at the same time, uh, many students may be part of the same activity, right? So this is a typical many-to-many relationship that you can create in Salesforce, right? Between these student and the activity, right? And then you can establish a relationship, or you can just have a simple one-to-one relation. Say, for example, I'm having student, right? And then I have a master. So I just have a question here. Uh, the question is about, is it possible to write validation rules and triggers, putting some values and all. Yeah, we can do that. I'll just show you how we can do that. So here I'm opening the student record, right? The student marks. So these are the marks the student has got, right? And this is the student. If you click on the student, so these are the details of the student, right? So it shows his the number of subjects he has passed, number of subjects he has failed, his some basic details, total marks, and then the you can also see the list of the subjects, right? So this is one view, right? These are the typical views that you can see. So now let's look at something on the back end, right? So let me see if I can just on this particular object, right? So let me just see if I can show you some triggers and all this. Yeah. So I do have one trigger that's already available on this object. Okay. So meanwhile, before going to a trigger, right, I'll just show you what is the developer's view of Salesforce, right? Say for example, I want to see how the developer console looks. So there is a built-in developer console apart from the force.com IDE. Okay. So this is my developer console. Okay. So this is part of your advanced developer track. Okay. There are two certifications here. So I'll just show you a simple class. Okay. This is a trigger. Okay. So I have a simple trigger here. So whenever the student record is created, okay, I just want to run a trigger which will update the result whether he has passed or failed, right, based on what he has uh, got, right, based on the marks he has got. Let me open a simple class, okay, that I have written. Um, just give me a minute, I think. Yeah. So I just got the class. So this is a very, very simple class that we have written. Okay. So those of you are familiar with Java would understand this. So you declare a class here, right? Then you declare a method inside the class, right? It's a very simple method called results. You're passing a mark in decimal format, right? And we are not doing much. It's pretty straightforward. If the mark is less than 0, we say invalid. If the mark is greater than 0, invalid. If the mark is greater than or equal to 40, says qualified. If less than 40 is failed. Okay. So we're going to call this class, right, pass or fail from the trigger. Okay. So this is the trigger we have written. If you observe here, pass or fail is the class, right? We are going to call, and then we're calling the method results with the argument 40, right? So it come in with marks as 40, and then it's going to qualify this particular record. Okay. So let us just create one student marks record. Okay. I'm just selecting a subject. Okay. This is a link to the relationship. So I'm picking a student. So maybe we pick one of the students, right? Sundar Pichai. So we'll say 67 marks. Okay. And it's a new record. I'll click on save here. Just see what happens. The value has come in automatically, right? You're getting a value pass or fail. So there is I have a Okay, I have a question from one of the attendees. So the question says, is it possible to do the same thing without writing code? Right? So the answer is yes. In Salesforce, right, there are a set of basic things that you can do just without writing code, right? The same objective that we do here can be managed without writing a code also. We can just write a simple validation rule or a formula, right? And that formula would calculate the pass or fail value. So that's a very simple way to do. So whatever you can do in a very simple way, you try to do using the declarative options, right? Don't go for Apex code. So that's the standard recommendation from Salesforce. They say that don't go for coding if you think you can do it by yourself. And the reason is simple. Uh, how Salesforce has sold the product is, or the platform is, you can go live very quick within say 30 days, 60 days, with without too much of he- heavyweight coding and all that. So they kind of sold this idea to the business, right? So the business is also happy with the fact that without spending in too much on the IT projects, I can go live fast within 30 days. But having said that, when you start getting into complex requirements, you cannot meet all the complex requirements just with your simple click, point and click declarative, options, right? So there you anyway have to go for a programming option, right? So you'll have to write some programs and do that. And if you have to call an external system, you have to write some web services. You have to make some callouts, or if you want to publish uh, an API on Salesforce, right, and expose that as a web service. So you can do that, and then the web service you can share the visuals with the calling team, the client team, right? Let's say you have a program which is running on Java, it's a web page, or there is a SAP system or something which is calling up Salesforce for creating a new record. So you can publish a simple web service, right, which can be consumed by an external system. So let's go to this class here, right? So one thing I want to highlight is, right, in this class, the good thing about the class, right? So you have written a class, which is all fine, and Salesforce, okay, does not allow you to, do your deployments from your environments, right? Development to your production environments, without writing test classes, okay? So that's a mandatory thing that you need to do in Salesforce. So we'll see how we can write a simple test class and just run it, and the code coverage, right? So the good thing is the code coverage that you have to do in Salesforce. If you have written say 10 lines of code, uh, you should have at least have 75% of code coverage, right? So that's a measure they have. So if you're having uh, many classes and many programs, right? So they expect you to test and cover at least 75% of the classes, right? So we'll just see what happened to this test class that I have created, right? So before this, I'll just show you the test class also. So this is the test class that I have written in Salesforce. This is again Apex programming language, right? So what I have done here is, uh, if you look at our class, right? Let me look at our class. Let's just look at our class for a minute. You'll have to bear with me because I'm switching between screens. So this is my, the results class, right? So if you see, it has one, two, three, four, almost four if blocks, right? When the code is executed, it is going to execute through only one of them, right? Depending on the condition that is being satisfied here. So you have to write at least uh, 4 test methods, right, to test this. And then this has around 10 or 18 lines, right? And if you really count the uh, the overall testing point of view, right, uh, you may have 10 lines of code. Okay, so we are checking, we are simulating a test scenario here, right? Win this test class. First, I'm testing a negative scenario, right? Then I'm testing a pass scenario, right? I'm testing a fail scenario, and also a greater than 100 scenario. So I have hard coded values here. That is not a good practice. It's not a good programming practice. Just for the demo purpose, we have done this. Okay, since it's a simple class. But you can also make this dynamic. You can set the values in some other table and then pull the values, right? So here we have written a simple test class which is testing all the 4 scenarios, and this is a unit test class. Okay, so the good thing about the platform is, unless you complete the test class, right, executed the tests, and also you verify, you have to also assert the results. Okay, you cannot simply run the scenarios. So you'll have to assert each and every scenario, right? Just like in Java, you do system.assert. You'll have to assert it here, and then uh, you can do a estimate code coverage for the organization. So I've run a simple test, right? And my code coverage is 83%, right? So you must have at least 75% code coverage like this. So if you've written, say, hundreds of classes here, you can run all the tests, and then also you can, uh, you know, plan for tests. So the good thing here is, if you have been in a continuous integration project, right, where you have implemented continuous integration in your project, you would have understood that Salesforce is a very uh, powerful platform wherein you can plan your test cases and you can run them every day, right? As and when the new test classes and the test cases are all written, and continuously keep running your tests. So that's one very powerful feature of the platform. That way, it helps improves your code coverage dramatically, right? And then we looked at a simple trigger, right? So we look at a trigger and see how it is written, right? So here, if you look at this code, what this does is, right, it updates the result, right? So you have two conditions, right? Before insert and before update. So what this means is, the trigger will be executed whenever a record is created or inserted, and the validations will happen, right? So let's say we edit some values, or you insert a new record. uh, in both the cases, you will execute this trigger, right? And then you're just calling this pass or fail value, right? And you can make these changes here, right? You can just use the mark that has been entered in the record, right, in the front end, and then say I have entered, say, value 40, right, for a particular student. So that value can be captured here, right? So in this example, I've just put in a hard-coded value, but you can just use the trigger variables and then write the code here. So this is a simple example, right? So we didn't want to complicate this. We didn't want to show you too many lines of code, but we just wanted to show you the power of the platform, right? And then we'll see what you can do on the UI, right? So you have a few options that you can perform on the UI, user interface, right? So we have something called Visual Force pages. So when I click on, say, student marks here, I see a list of things, right? So these are user interfaces which are automatically created by Salesforce, right? These are called page layouts, and an administrator can create this page layout, right? Automatically, these are all created. You can make some changes to the page layout, but there are some limitations. Say, for example, uh, I want to do a multi-edit, right? Say, I want to edit all the students from the screen here on the grid. You have some limitations on the platform. So you will not be able to do certain uh, edits or certain, say you want to publish a map on the page, right? Certain things are not directly possible on the declarative option. So you will have to go for a simple Visual Force page. So let us look at an example here. Let me see if I have it. Just give me a minute. I'll just show you how you can do it. It's very straightforward. So we'll just create a VF page to display, some pages here. Right. So this may look a bit crude for people who are advanced programmers, but just so we're just doing a shortcut here, right? Um, so there is a built-in Visual Force page editor. Okay. So I have two options. I can just type in a page name. If the page exists, the page will be open, or I can create a new page from here, this link. Okay. Or I can go to the editor, right? I can just go to the editor here and then go to development mode and then create a new Visual Force page. Okay, so in Visual Force you can include HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all the JavaScript libraries like jQuery and Node.js, Angular.js, all that, right? It supports all the mobile platforms also. Then you can also use Flash, right? So you can do a lot of different stuff here. Okay, so this is the most simple Apex page that one can create, right? So I just created a simple page, and if you observe, this is a the HTML tag, right? This is an HTML tag. I hope you're able to see it. Let me just zoom it a bit. Say I can just do H1 and then say bold, right? These are tags for HTML, right? So I click on save, just see the page automatically will get refreshed. Yeah. So this has come in bold, right? And then this is just a standard message, right? So I can make it bigger. I can put in some HTML tags. I can even call a JavaScript from here, right? So you can do different things here, and you can also attach it to the um, controller, right? So we have an object called student master, right? So the object has a controller, right, which is a default controller, right? We talked about the MEC model, correct? So if you look at the controller, we'll just see what happens, right? Just a minute. I think there's a small typo here. So when I click on the student master page, uh, and I open a record, right? So I'm seeing the standard page which was created by declarative options, right? So same thing, I can just open it here using a VF page. I can put in more values here, right? And I'll just do a preview here. Just see, it opens a Visual Force page. Okay, so here I can include more tags, right, which will kind of show you the same values that you're able to see here, right? When you open this page uh, in a VF page. The advantage of the VF page is you can refresh, say, the screen partially, right? So depending on this value you selected here, you can refresh the screen and show more values. So it's similar to what you do in Ajax, right? So the partial refresh of the pages can be done. I can put a map here on the left, right, or on the right of the screen. So it gives you the power of doing all those stuff, right, using Visual Force, right? So you can continue to keep adding more things here, and you can also do jobs, right? You can create scheduled jobs. You can put in a batch job, right? And then you can run bulk load data jobs. Then you can import data, right? So there are tools available within Salesforce to import data of all the standard objects. There are both external and internal tools which are available, right? And I'll just show you a few things on the code window, right? So we have, this is a debug log, okay? This is a developer console. I am having a piece of code here. So what it does is, uh, it is writing a select statement, okay? So in Salesforce, those of you who are familiar with, uh, you know, SQL, right? If you have used SQL in SQL Server or Java, so it has similar syntax, but there are a few differences. Of course, when you join tables, you don't actually join them, you just use some relationship objects and all, and then you run the query, right? One thing you cannot do in Salesforce is you cannot do, say, select star from, right? This is not allowed. You'll have to give the fields explicitly, which is a good thing, right? And then you execute this query, okay? And then I'm loading these values into a list, right? List object, array object in Java, right? And then I'm going through the values and then performing some updates, okay? Let us see if this piece of code will execute. Okay, if I click on execute of this, right? I don't know if there will be any errors. So, how do I see whether it has worked or not? Okay, so you have some options. You have something called logs. Okay, so if you just see, the time is around 10:42, right? So 10:41, this is a log that has been generated, right? So this is the debug log that is generated by the platform. So let us see if we can understand some points here. So if you see, this is the select statement that was there in the code, right? This is a select statement which is written in the code. Then there are some debug statements, right? So I've written some statements like, uh, about to update, right? Say I've written a system.debug statement about to update. So you can see that here, right? About to update. So if you just come down, okay, this is an important piece of information. It shows how many queries have got executed, right? So in Salesforce, SQL query is actually called as SOQL query, okay? SOQL. It stands for Salesforce Object Query Language, okay? So what it shows the number of queries that are executed, 1 out of 100. Then how many rows have been retrieved? So looks like there are no rows for the query condition we gave. Okay. So these are the debug statements which are there in the system. So you can troubleshoot based on this. So looks like the query does not fetch any data, right? So in fact, you can just select this, right? And then you have something called a query editor. I think it will just, you can just execute it here. So looks like there are no records. So let me just change I'll just remove this var clause. I'll just execute. And if you see, these are the results. So this is a built-in query editor, right? So looks like there are a lot of departments where department name equal to mech. So if I do this, I'm getting some rows, right? So let me just go to my code and I'll say, I'll make small change here. I'll just make a small change here. I'm just making it to mech. So get all the values with mech and make them mech 1, right? I just want to see what happens, right? So if I execute this piece, let's see what happens. I'll just run the query again. Let me just see if there are any rows which are updated. Okay, so looks like it is not worked. So department underscore C equal to mech, right? So let us look at the code a little bit further. I know it may not be making much sense here at this point of time, but I'm just showing a demo on how you can do some troubleshooting, right? So this is a for loop, okay, where you're going through the records and then you're just making a value here and then you're just updating, okay. So let me look at the log also. So there is a log which was generated towards the end, right, 10:45 p.m. So this query shows there are 8 rows, right? 8 rows have been retrieved, right? So which is correct, which is what we see from the front end also, right? And then let's see what it has done actually. I think it's picking up the values here. Okay, so number of queries 1, the number of rows 8, right? 8 rows have been returned, and then number of DML statements 1. Okay, so one DML statement has been executed here, right? So let's just look at the front end, right? Let's just see if there are any students with. So there are no students with mech. So I just do a filter on contains mech. Yeah, so there are 8 students, okay, who have been updated to mech. So let's just toggle back, right? I'll just toggle back to all the students to mech again, right? So I'll just do it with the code and then just click on execute. Then go to the front end, right? I'll just refresh. So if you see here, department has become mech again, okay? So for all the students, the department has become mech. So you can troubleshoot and also uh, look at the logs. So whatever you do, right, in the force your Eclipse, you can do it here, right? And then it shows you certain limitations here, right? So this is basically a part of the Salesforce multi-tenant architecture, right? So where you have resources being shared across multiple customers or multiple tenants. Uh, Even though it may appear as a restriction, it's a very fairly large amount of quota that you get of the resources, right? So if you look at it in a particular transaction context, right? So this is my sample code, right? This code executes. This is a transaction context wherein I execute a query. So I'm allowed to execute 100 queries, database queries, and I'm allowed to retrieve 50,000 rows. So what I have done here is I've selected one query. I've got 8 rows. I'll SOSL will ignore it for time being. Then one DML statement. Okay. So there is a limitation of the number of DMLs also, right? So in my case, I have one DML which is an update, right? Database manipulation language. It's an update. So I have one DML statement and my quota is 150. So I'm well within the limits. If you see, it shows the CPU time, heap usage, callouts, and a few other things. Okay. So it's fairly exhaustive debug logs. You can see from the developer console as well as from the force.com Eclipse, right? IDE, which if you're a Java programmer, you would usually prefer an Eclipse ID, right? So it has options for both, right? There are 2 or 3 options for development, multiple options for a developer, right? And then you can also develop mobile pages, right? Uh, and the good thing is you write a page, you develop a page on the common platform, and you have apps for both Android and iOS platform, right? And then you can run the same app. You can run the same screen on both the Android and iOS platform. You don't have to rewrite code specifically for iOS or Android. But of course, there are certain limitations when you do that. Salesforce also supports you and allows you to write your own native code for both Android and iOS platform. Right? They provide you a mobile SDK. So the mobile platform also is quite flexible and powerful. Okay, and recently they have come with something called as a lightning platform. Okay, I'll just show you a quick screen. uh, so, so this is a UI, right? It's a rich UI which they have kind of launched very recently. It is built on a framework called Aura framework, right? And again, it's people who are familiar with all those frameworks. It's a very popular one. So the entire look and feel changes completely here. Okay, and the same look and feel is available on the mobile page also. So it's basically, you would have heard about this term responsive design, right? So you build a page and then the page is opens up on the mobile device or your tab or smartphone, depending on the layout, as well as on the laptops or your desktop. So depending on the screen size, the screen automatically adjusts, right? So by default, all these pages are responsive also, right? So that is one of the powers of the platform, which kind of everything happens automatically, right? You don't have to uh, design and develop for all that very specifically and put in a lot of effort. So that is one of the other benefits of the platform, right? So basically, we have seen how Salesforce fits the MVC pattern, right? Design pattern. Then you build your own data model. You can use programmatic options also for creating your data objects. You can use the metadata API, right? Salesforce is a completely metadata driven architecture. Plus the front end, like whatever we saw in terms of the object creation and all that, right? So you can create your own objects from the front end, use point and click, or you can do some things programmatically also. You have a query language which is similar to SQL, right? Like SQL, you have SOQL, which more or less same syntax like SQL, which you're familiar with. You have a programming language, object-oriented programming language, which is similar to Java or C Sharp. It's a strongly typed language. You have basic all the data types. You have all complex data types, arrays. You can define your own arrays. It supports, interfaces, inheritance, polymorphism, all of that, right? To name a few. And then it's a on-demand cloud computing language. The code is stored on the cloud, not on your laptops. Of course, when you use Eclipse, the source code is available on your laptop. It supports all the standard config management tools like Mavens or CVS and GitHub, all of that. You can do continuous integration. It's got a powerful unit testing framework, right? And then you can write database triggers. You can create your own screens, right? Visual Force, Page, HTML, JavaScript. So all these web technologies, all the latest technologies are supported, and the learning curve is fairly simple if you're a Java programmer or a C Sharp. And if you don't have an experience also, so you have options wherein you can start as a declarative programmer and then slowly learn the platform, and then you become a advanced programmer, right? So these are in nutshell, the features of the platform, right, as such. So I think there were a few questions which I think I answered at the beginning, and I think there was a question about uh, support of Python. Okay, so I don't think we are supporting anything related to the Python programming language, but of course you can use all the other web languages, JavaScript, Java, and all that, right? And then uh, I think it's very much similar to Java in terms of the object-oriented programming concepts, right? So, if there are any further questions, I can take it, and then we'll wind up. Okay, so there is one question about the course options, right? So in terms of the course options, you have, like I said before, you have the pure admin track which you want to start if you think you are not comfortable with programming, or you can directly start as a developer also if you think you are a good Java developer, you're very comfortable with Java or JavaScript, one of them, you can get started. And then uh, everyone has to understand the basics of the platform, which is the security model, the data model, and some of the declarative options. And then you can, of course, branch out as a developer or as a advanced developer, right? And then you also have the architecture stream wherein you can take up the architecture certifications. After you become a advanced developer, you can go for it, right? So you have three tracks: admin track, you have the implementation or the functional track, then you have the pure play developer track who likes to write a lot of code, right? I hope that answered your question. Okay, thank you. So I hope this session was useful. Then if there are any further questions, you can feel free to write them to us. We'll be more than happy to, uh, you know, explain them, give you more clarifications if you need. Then we can take it forward from there. So thanks for attending this webinar. I hope it was useful. Thank you.